Marley died 7 Christmas Eves ago. His former partner, Ebenezer Scrooge, was known for his miserly ways. When greeted with,
"Merry Christmas,"
was his reply, a charitable Christmas request,
"donation for the poor, please,"
was met with a lecture of poorhouses, work farms, and reducing the surplus population. A young caroler at his door singing,
"Hook the Herald," and Joe singing,
would be chased away. Every year he refused his nephew Fred's invitation and snapped at his clerk, Bob Cratchit.
"I suppose you want all day off tomorrow, eh? That's a pretty excuse for picking a man's pocket every 25th of December. You see, sir, that you're here all the earlier next morning."
On Christmas Eve, alone in his cold chambers, Scrooge was startled by rattling chains. An apparition appeared. Scrooge stammered, "Who are you?"
"In life, I was your partner, Jacob Marley."
Scrooge did not believe his senses. With rattling chains, the ghost prevailed upon Scrooge, who asked, "What do you want with me, and why do you wear those chains?"
The spirit within each man must walk among his fellow men. If that spirit does not go forth in life, it is condemned to do so after death, doomed to witness what it cannot share, but might have shared. I wear the chain I forged in life, made link by link of my own free will. Your chain was as long as this 7 Christmases ago. You have labored on it since.
Marley offered Scrooge one hope, a visitation by 3 spirits, with the first appearing when the clock next struck. Following Marley to the window, Scrooge saw Marley joined by a multitude of spirits seeking to aid an orphan child who cried out,
"What shall I do? Can somebody help me, please?"
The spirits wanted to intercede, but could do nothing. Scrooge fled to his bed, covering himself with blankets. The clock struck. He saw a growing light. The spirit said he was the ghost of Christmas past, Scrooge's past. Scrooge was taken by the spirit to a schoolroom where he saw himself as a boy, alone on Christmas Eve. Through the door came his sister Fan. Embracing young Ebenezer, she assured him that the situation at home was much better.
"It's okay now. You can come home for Christmas."
Scrooge then saw himself as an apprentice to old Fezziwig, whose warehouse was prepared for a Christmas party, only costing a few pounds. How so little money could make the difference between a bearable and unbearable situation. That scene transformed to one of a broken engagement. Belle, his betrothed, accused him of replacing her in his heart with a golden idol. More Christmases followed, including Fan's death and childbirth with her son Fred, and Belle happily married with a family that could have been his. Scrooge cried out,
"Spirit, I cannot bear it. Haunt me no more."
Scrooge charged forward to grasp the spirit, but instead tumbled to the floor. The clock struck again. A booming voice announced the ghost of Christmas present. Scrooge following reluctantly, they walked the streets on a bright Christmas morning. The spirit gloried in his day. They stopped at Bob Cratchit's home. Cratchit arrived carrying his youngest child, Tiny Tim. Over the bustle of Christmas dinner preparations, Mrs. Cratchit asked if Tiny Tim behaved at church. Bob replied,
"As good as gold. Somehow he gets thoughtful, sitting by himself so much, and thinks the strangest things you ever heard. He told me, coming home, that he hoped that the people in the church saw him, because he was a cripple."
Tiny Tim had told his father,
"It might be pleasant to remember upon Christmas Day, who made the lame to walk and the blind to see."
The goose and the pudding were produced. The children squealed with delight. Scrooge heard one exclaim,
"That's a pudding. That's a goose."
The meal was meager for a large family. Once seated, Bob offered a Christmas blessing, with Tiny Tim saying,
"God blesses us, everyone."
Scrooge turned to the spirit.
"Tell me that Tiny Tim will live?"
The ghost replied,
I see a vacant seat, and a crutch without an owner. If these shadows remain unaltered, the child will die.
Scrooge pleaded that Tiny Tim be spared, but the ghost rebuked him.
If he be like to die, he had better do it and decrease the surplus population.
Scrooge hung his head, hearing his own words. His attention turned, though, when Bob Cratchit offered Scrooge a toast as founder of the feast. Mrs. Cratchit refused to join, but was prevailed upon for the sake of Christmas Day. Then Scrooge was transported to his nephew Fred's home. The guests' laughter was directed at Scrooge. When an angry word was pointed at Scrooge, though, Fred stated, I couldn't be angry at him. I pity him. So I offer a toast. He wouldn't take it from me, but he may have it nevertheless. A Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to Uncle Scrooge. The scene faded. The spirit was gone. Scrooge stood alone. The clock struck again. A shrouded figure rose before him. Scrooge fell to his knees, pleading,
Ghost of the future, I fear you more than any spectre I have seen. I am prepared to bear you company.
At the exchange, two businessmen discussed a colleague's death, but would not go to the funeral unless provided a free meal. Noticing himself missing from his usual corner, Scrooge wondered who they spoke about. The spirit's cloak passed over him. Scrooge then stood in the city, where it reeked with crime and filth. In a dirty shop, people sold stolen goods from a man who died alone. One woman said,
It's a judgment on him.
With another pass of the cloak, Scrooge stood before a covered body. The ghost motioned for Scrooge to lift the cover, but he could not. He begged the spirit to show him someone who felt some emotion at the man's death. He was shown a couple in debt to the dead man. The woman exclaimed,
I'm so thankful I'll have time to pay our debts.
Scrooge turned to the spirit.
Can you not show me some tenderness connected with death?
Following the spirit, Scrooge again crossed Bob Cratchit's threshold. A child read,
And he took a child and set him in the midst of him.
It was a somber gathering. Bob Cratchit came in. His wife asked if he had gone there today. Cratchit replied,
Yes, my dear. I've seen where our tiny table is to rest. It had done you good to see how green a place it is. You'll see it often. I promised him that we would walk there of a Sunday.
Despite his best efforts, Bob Cratchit began sobbing.
My little child.
Scrooge looked to the spirit, but found no comfort from the silent spectre. Scrooge asked,
Now, Spirit, tell me what man that was we saw lying dead.
The ghost conveyed him to a churchyard, walled in by houses overrun by grass and weeds. The spirit stood among the graves, pointing down. Said Scrooge,
For I draw nearer to the stone at which you point. Tell me, are these the shadows of the things that will be? Or are they the shadows of the things that may be?
The ghost, immovable, pointed to a grave. Trembling, Scrooge crept forward. He read on the neglected gravestone, Ebenezer Scrooge. Falling to his knees and clutching the spirit's robes, Scrooge cried out,
Tell me I may sponge away the writing on this stone. I will honor Christmas in my heart and try to keep it all the year. I will live in the past, the present, and the future. The spirits of all three shall strive within me.
As Scrooge clung to the spirit's cloak, it collapsed before him in a pile of curtains around his bedpost. Scrooge jumped up, repeating,
I will live in the past, the present, and the future. Oh, Jacob Marley, heaven and Christmas time be praised for this.
Scrooge was giddy. Running around his rooms, overcome with excitement, he soon winded himself. Going to a window, he threw it open. Church bells were ringing. Scrooge asked the boy on the street what day it was.
It's Christmas Day.
He had not missed it. He asked the lad if he knew the butcher's shop nearby.
I should think you do.
Scrooge asked if the prize turkey was still there.
The one as big as me is hanging there now.
Scrooge had the boy bring back the butcher with the turkey to send to Bob Cratchit. Going out, Scrooge made a donation that he previously refused.
Thank you, sir. Merry Christmas.
Scrooge went to Fred's party, raised Bob Cratchit's salary, and pledged to help Tiny Tim. Scrooge was better than his word. He did it all and more. To Tiny Tim, who did not die, he was a second father. He became as good a friend, as good a master, and as good a man as the good old city ever knew. Ever afterwards it was always said of him that he knew how to keep Christmas well. May that be truly said of us all, and so, as Tiny Tim observed,
God blesses us, everyone. The end.